Well, Nick gave the introduction of what we're going to be talking about today, performance. Going to be hitting you with a lot of data, so I hope you like data. I'll try to give you some of the background on how we came up with some of these measures and the justification of us internally why we determined to do these types of things. But I don't know if these slides are going to be shared at all, but the reason TSMO performance program is green there, it is a link to our website. So all these reports and a lot of the data and the methodology is right on our website in our reports. We've always been transparent with that and how we've gone about doing a lot of these things. So if you want to do that, you can just Google PennDOT TSMO performance program and it'll come up too. So I'm going to be talking about our program background real quick. We've been doing this for now 10 plus years. We started this process, but I'm going to shift gears a little bit more towards the project development, planning, design side of the house. So the project planning for TSMO specifically, and then I'm going to give an evaluation of a TSMO project example, what we've done for one of those, and then some more annual organizational health measures that we've culturally started to bring into our TSMO performance program. We might be expanding to other disciplines within the DOT. So moving right into it. So the organizational buy-in for us was huge in the beginning. Our leadership saw the importance of being data-driven. I think from an operations perspective or a TSMO perspective, we are always fighting to justify ourselves. And I've always been a big proponent that data can help us. Data is there to do that for us because the numbers speak a lot more than just anecdotal words. So this is what my office looks like. So we have the traffic systems and TSMO performance section, the TMC operations section, and then temporary traffic control. But what is different back then, around 10 plus years ago, the office administration dedicated data scientists to assist us with this because we are generally planners, civil engineers. We're not data scientists. We need people that are good with the data, know how to store the data, then also know how to correlate the data within databases. So we primarily use the Microsoft suite, so Azure, and we have things stored in the cloud, and then we also have things stored on-prem. Now, the things in the cloud are more experimental research that we work on in our traffic operations analytics database in our tool. So that's a key component if you're trying to get this off the ground. Where we started with this though was just the correlation of the existing resources we had at our fingertips, our crash records and our road condition reporting system. So think event management. And then we've had a license with Waze for a very long time. And then we've procured INRIX speed data for a long time too. That's all we started with. Now those subsequent bullets are where we've moved to. This database has now grown to around 70 terabytes over the last 10 or so years. It's probably higher than that. I'm gonna have to double check with those data scientists I talk about. But the first place we wanted to start was putting data behind the incident timeline. I think from a TSMO perspective or an operations perspective, we always wanted to know when it actually truly takes for those roadway conditions to get back to normal. That highlighted 2 T6, T7 you can see there is something that always evaded us with data. But since we had the INRIX data, we know the historical norms of speeds. We know when the incident occurs in those different various data sets that we manage. We were able to tie data to that aspect of that, and then we created what we call incident influence time. This helped us culturally when we were working with our traffic management centers, that just because we got all clear from the field, we shouldn't be blanking our boards. There's still residual delays out there, dangerous queues. So to quantify that for them, to show them that these types of crashes were occurring in those queues that happened after the all clear, helped us culturally shift, the mindset. So we're able to do that. That empowered us to look at instant clearance times by county, and that from the DOT perspective, that's generally how we handle our traffic incident management at our county level. So that's just an example of what we were able to do. Similar to Google, red, yellow, green, red being the higher number of minutes on average it takes to get an incident cleared. Okay, so that's where we started. Fast forward to probably the last 5 or so years, and even the most recently, the last couple of years, where we've got into data-driven TSMO project planning. This is gonna take us into the weeds a little bit, like I told you about, but I'll try to keep it interesting. So give you a frame of reference. We have operations regions, like I'm sure most of you do in your states. We have 4 regions right now: the Western, the Central, the Eastern, which is the blue, so it's from Harrisburg up to Scranton. You can see there, just follow the 81 corridor. And then the Southeastern Regional Traffic Management Center, generally the Philadelphia Metro. So keep that in mind. That's going to be your frame of reference for how I'm going to talk about this next section and then other aspects of this presentation. So what we wanted to do with planning, and I would say design, is steal and replace and take those best practices that safety has had in play for a long, long time. So on the left there, we have a strategic highway safety plan that a lot of different states have to have. It's mandatory, I'm pretty sure. But here in Pennsylvania, they do a network screening each time they come up with these plans, where they're looking at a variety of different risks, over-accentuated crash risks. Are there certain areas, certain geometries that are overrepresented, so they can isolate certain solutions, safety solutions, that they could then prescribe funds for. Pretty common. I mean, that is pretty much a scientific model there. If you're looking at the problem, you think about it, you address it, you go forward. We stole that, and we stole that idea, and we came up with regional operations plans several years ago now. And that methodology is what we've tried to institute over the last 5 years, being more data-driven and less anecdotal. So I'm going to talk a little bit more. What is a regional operations plan? So it is now a data-driven process, but it takes that safety best practice and brings in stakeholders. The stakeholders are all parts of this. So think of your TIM community, your planning partners. And we need to identify and correlate our plans. So we identify those congestions, those causes now, and I'll get into that a little bit. And then we try to, this is our long-range transportation plan for operations in Pennsylvania. Getting that incorporated into the true Pennsylvania long-range transportation plan is another story. We're working towards that, or the TIP for that matter. We're working towards that. We've taken baby steps there, but that is the end goal, what we want to do. But this is the monies we manage from our office's perspective, that we can come up with standalone projects. But generally, for the most part, we add on to other capital projects with these funds, so we can support TSMO across the state. So we are now in our second round of developing ROPS for each region. We just started our central region back, I think it was around the fall of 2024. It'll be finalized here, I think, in early 2025. So each of the regions have ROPS, and they come up with TSMO solutions for specific areas, and then it's generalized into a mapping component, etc., in the plan, and it's shared with the planning partners. But how do we get there? So we identify the congestion, the unreliability issues for the region. We have a tool here in Pennsylvania that is a data-driven congestion pie chart. So those areas that we determine through tools like RIDIS, that could be potential bottlenecks, or maybe it's a separate safety problem that we think is a safety problem, we can dive into the details of what actually is causing that congestion. And I'll get into that a little more here in a little bit. So in these areas, once we start to classify that congestion, we will then go to our TSMO toolbox and determine what types of solutions would be most applicable for that problem. Now, sometimes we have to get creative, and maybe it's multiple solutions, like the example I'm going to go over in a little while. as far as the evaluation component that we have. But so I'm gonna show you a few things that we've developed. Now, this isn't as it relates to the ROP, but this is going to be an enhancement to the ROP. Well, one report that we're working on, pretty much final right now, is an ITS device priority location. It's good for CMS at this point. So basically, what you see on your screen, we're red, yellow, green again, very easy to understand. The more red areas based off of a safety score, an operations score, compilated together would be a good proposed location where you might want to consider a CMS. So it's a whole logic that we came up with, but it's a general performance base that putting a score towards things is a good way to go about this because it evens out the variance, I'll call it. But we have a side by side with your existing sign locations just in case it doesn't make sense. But getting into the data-driven congestion pie chart, it is scalable down to segment level. So left to right, you can see the Pennsylvania congestion pie chart, recurring congestion, the green wedge, I'll focus in on first, 10%. And then you go to that southeastern region, the Philadelphia metro, their recurring congestion is around 27%. And then you go to I-95 in Philadelphia County, and it's 44%. So that's one tool we have in our toolbox that was empowered a lot by all those data sets that I talked about just in the beginning. We didn't have a ton of other information there, but the one key thing that actually pushed us over the edge was pulling in that crowdsourced incident information from Waze and INRIX. It helped us quantify the areas where we didn't know what was going on out there. Now, we put some levels of confidence in that based off of different parameters. It's in the minute details of the methodology, but that helped us get to this. Now, this is just core roadway network. We are shooting to plan in our traffic routes. So that's our 3-digit routes where signals are going to be involved. That is the next phase of what we're working on. But as I transition to a project level analysis, I wanted to give you a look under the hood here a little bit and into a specific section of roadway. So this is I-76. It's a Schuylkill Expressway going into Center City, Philadelphia. It's one of our most congested roads that we have in the state, period. It has one of the higher ADTs in the state. But what we wanted to do is understand, obviously, but at a congestion level, what are the causes there? You'll notice in this section, not a lot of it is recurrent. A lot of the congestion is caused by road work, other incidents, crashes, minor crashes, weather. 10% only being recurrent. All right, well, what types of solutions could we consider for this? I guess I shouldn't skip ahead. On the left, then, we can show them when they're most unreliable. Not surprisingly, it's around the rush hour in the afternoon, that 3 o'clock time frame. But what was surprising to everybody was the 7 o'clock or the 6 o'clock, where you would think, the rush hour would be most unreliable. But where it's most relevant here, what we diagnosed is it's those incidents on those days that carry over and they bleed over into when rush hour is supposed to end. It will then make the whole network deteriorate for longer periods of time when we have incidents on this road. So the district wanted to come up with a solution to reduce those number of incidents. And little geography here of this area, if you're unfamiliar with Philadelphia and this road period, capacity wasn't an option. Okay, this road's been over capacity probably since it was built, unfortunately, but capacity wasn't a problem. There's a river on one side, and then there's bedrock cliffs on the other side. So basically, TSMO, or Operations Solutions, were pretty much what was considered at this point. This was the first integrated corridor management project that we delivered in the state. So this went live in 2021 with just variable speed limit signs and queue warning. But from a performance perspective and my office's perspective, who helped develop the algorithm for the automated VSL signs, and then helped develop the business rules and the algorithm for the queue warning, we wanted to make sure we were calibrating this correctly. So we were constantly monitoring the safety results back in 2021 as it related. So as soon as that crash data was finalized, we wanted to see what was occurring here. Total crashes look great. Okay, people were listening. So the blue line is 2021. The 5-year average, 2015, 2019. Notice we cut out 2020. We saw that steady downward trend. But then when we looked at the rear end crashes, there was a lag. And what we set out to correct was rear end crashes, because they were very overrepresented. I think it was over 60% of the crashes that were occurring on this corridor were rear ends. We wanted to see if there were anything. But with anything like this, changing the behavior, we anticipated a lag, but our lag lasted about 4 months. And then once we kind of broke through that Philadelphia community where it's like, no, this makes sense. 1 mile ahead, if you start to see slowdowns, we designed the solution. If you see any speed slowdowns on the VSLs, you can anticipate that you're going to run into the back of a queue or a queue. People started to catch on 4 months, and then you see that drastic drop we saw in October, and that consistently persisted for the last 2 years. We just finalized our 2024 data, so I couldn't give that to you here, but what we've now seen since 3-year averages, we compared them to the 5 years. So I know I have a lot of performance folks on here. No, that's not apples to apples. But it was the best we could do at the time of this analysis, but we wanted to look at averages. So we saw a 22% decrease in total crashes, 32% decrease in rear end crashes since the go live, and then a 21% decrease in crashes involving injuries or fatality. Why I say this and why I put it in these two different ways with the charts and the graphs is our audience when it comes to performance is always going to be different. Data folks, all of you on the call, probably aren't going to trust just seeing those graphics at the top. You're going to want to see the raw data. So we'll put together what the raw data would be there, and we would emphasize that. So executives at the top are engineers. We would give the raw data to in a more graphical format. Engineer analysis here again, capacity enhancements. Remember, I told you that this road was over capacity pretty much ever since it was constructed. Just the institution of the VSLs and the queue protection, we were able to increase the capacity, both the volume, both directions. So orange being 2022, this is the most recent data I had, and then 2017 for the 3-year average. And then we looked at the economic impact of reducing these number of crashes, improving the capacity, decreasing travel times, which no one really thought was going to expect here. Now, this is a 12-mile road, so we're talking about here. But to see a decrease in 4 minutes in the historical travel time, or 2 minutes in the historical travel time on 11 to 12 miles, we did not expect to see that. But that economic impact, when we portrayed this to everybody, was a $46 million decrease in what we would consider. But then we also ran the emissions. So with all those positives, we hypothetically removed around 750 vehicles, or 3,100 tons of emissions per year. Draw your attention to the right side. I showed that to you all in bullets and everything like that. The graphic on the right side tells you all those things in a one-stop shop. Now, it's tough for you to see on this slide, but we were able to share this out more of like a social media aspect, share this out through the press, etc. Because our audience, everybody knows it's quick. You're going to lose attention immediately. So having the ability to make these a little prettier, I'll call it, has helped go a long way with us correlating the benefits of what TSMO projects can do. All right, so where do we want to go? We want to optimize this project planning process. right now we're not the best at correlating actually where safety concerns are and operation concerns are. So what we're going to do is pull analysis together that considers both of those. We've recently had a conversation with the design performance management team, and they want to start considering operations metrics as it relates to how their design measures already are established. It's new. Anybody from PennDOT is on here. I don't mean to scare you. And then what we want to do is similar to what Ohio DOT does in their TIMS website. Big shout out to them. They've done a great way of allowing things to be publicly accessible and then overlapping and very easy to understand on their website where certain plans, where certain projects, where certain issues are. So we would like to mirror what Ohio DOT has done on their TIMS website. Okay, so I'm going to wrap up here real quick. So organizational health measures. I started with this. I'm going to kind of end this section with this. Incident clearance times. This helps us with our TIM collaboration, working with our county maintenance teams. So if there's a certain area, it's very clear where we would need to address any TIM concerns, collaborative efforts, etc., based off those clearance times. Our TMCs, the root of operations, everybody knows we need to make sure our situational awareness and what their core duty is working. And as you can tell on that chart, or if you can't tell, that is our TMC's awareness of incidents that have occurred on the roadway. We've plateaued around that 70% area in the areas that aren't using computer-aided dispatch wholly. There is one up to 84%. They use computer-aided dispatch all the time, but it's like web-based, login. But this helped us justify a grant application to bring computer-aided dispatch to Pennsylvania, and we were successful in getting that. On the right-hand side, we offer maps to them that shows where they missed, we'll call it, significant incidents that caused major delays to the public, and that's through a heat map, the darker areas being those areas. Okay, I'm kind of hitting you rapid fire here, but these are all organization related. So this one's incident health, and I tried to put next to them how it relates. So this is TMC responsiveness, traffic systems effectiveness, and then our TIM practices. This is a pretty cool one that I like to highlight. So secondary crashes by time after the primary crash. It shows how quickly we are responding and how many incidents we are considering secondary that are occurring in the congestion in the back of the queue. We're able to quantify different measures on that. And then the second one is work zone, temporary traffic control related. So this helps us understand if our temporary traffic control procedures are working. Do we need to modify certain things? We have the ability to look into that. And then if we need to institute any more queue protection around our work zones, because that's always changing each year. Okay, so we have a TMC productivity. This is down to the operator level. This was a request by our TMC managers that they wanted to see productivity down to the operator. I was very reluctant on this as a performance manager because it feels like Big Brother, don't get me wrong. But they wanted it. They wanted to check in to see who was helping out the TMC as much as they can and compare them to their peers, which that aspect is good. I think that empowers them during their planning meetings with their staff. And then one big thing for everybody is the devices out there. How are our devices being used? Are they being used effectively? So we created a report that looks at the activity based off of message type. Now, this is just CMS, but I think we've built out our ITS device network on piggybacking on those capital projects. If you remember me saying that, maybe not necessarily always where the DMS or CMS needed to be. So we have this ability now to see, are we using these effectively? If this device was to be antiquated, should it be replaced? Maybe we have a better location for this with that previous report I showed. And then finally, justifying our program at the fingertips of each TMC manager. They can look at all the overview information. So the crashes by their region, what type of congestion they're working with each year on their corridor network, etc. So we try to give this type of dashboard view to our managers. So when they get questions, they can go back and justify why their office is fully staffed, etc. So thank you.
Thanks, Ryan. So we had a couple questions for you. First one is, does PennDOT have any dedicated funding sources for TSMO or ITS projects for freeways and or arterials?
We have support through the interstate tip on some things. The short answer is yes. Yeah, we do have some dedicated funding that helps with the TSMO performance program specifically, yes. But not a lot. It's not as much as you would think. It's not in the millions.
Okay. All right. Another question. Does PennDOT develop CMFs to understand the application and effective of solutions, or do you base countermeasures individually and based on context?
I think it's the latter. It's more context. We do both, but we're trying to get into the more micro planning aspect at this point for where we are. But every plant's different. I think that would be the answer there. We do both.
Okay, great. Also, do you use your statewide awareness of incidents to identify funding distribution to your 4 regions, or do you use this to prioritize needs within the regions?
We did not tie it to funding yet. So whoever asked that question might be reading my mind. We're considering having a tie-in with funding, but that has to be vetted. I don't, that's a political situation. Funding always gets political, but yes, it makes sense to have it tied to funding. And if you can get that instituted in your culture, I think it's a good practice.
Okay. A couple more questions. We've heard a lot about variance in measures during the first few months of the pandemic. And did PennDOT experience any wild fluctuations then? And if so, what have you done to mitigate it?
Yeah, well, when it comes to performance, we pretty much threw out a lot of the data when it was through COVID. We actually were sort of on the forefront of this because our executive offices wanted us to run gas tax analysis to understand if our revenue was dropping. So we came up with a methodology to understand our ADTs, our real-time volumes, and how that was going to relate for the next month's gas revenue. So we were kind of at the pulse of what was going on there. So a lot of variance. We've thrown out pretty much all of analysis we threw out 2019. End of 2019, 2020 for a lot of things. But we always use averages across 5-year average or 3-year average. I don't generally go less than 3-year average.
Okay. All right. The congestion pie chart was a huge part of early TSMO communications and justification. So apparently at the very first CTSO meeting that happened back in 2017, PennDOT's Doug Tomlinson expressed wanting to have a real-time congestion pie chart.
Yeah.
Do you feel that this has been accomplished with this, and are there more opportunities for any improvements?
Oh, there's always more room for improvements. But yeah, I mean, Doug Tomlinson's my boss. So basically he has good ideas. He just needed the help from us to bring it to fruition. So that's what we did. We worked with the data scientists and we had that done by 2020 to do congestion pie chart. Now, keep in mind, this is core network. These are your interstates. This is where we started because it was most operationally centric to TSMO at that time. We are expanding to more signalized, controlled roads at this next phase.
Okay. All right. For your before and after evaluation of the I-76 Philadelphia VSL and Q warning, were the traffic patterns different in the before and after years? And if so, does that contribute to the differences in the difference in the crashes?
The traffic patterns different. They were. We waited to verify any of the information until the volumes reached back pre-pandemic amounts. So all those numbers are apples to apples. We're actually higher volumes now than we were ever before on that road. I don't know if I answered that. I think I answered that.
Last question. You had talked about the regional operation plans, and everyone's kind of at a like different stage with that. So once you get it all of those completed, how often do you think each of those would be updated? Is there a schedule, or do you guys?
Yeah, every 4 years.
Every 4 years. Okay. All right. Well, thanks, Ryan. Appreciate all the great information. And it was the other thing is any thoughts to your connection to the Tom and some of the performance management types of things that you guys are doing? Anything you'd like to share that would be helpful to the group? Let's say if somebody's looking to get information, is there anything that the Tom you think would be able to offer that would be helpful to these folks?
I think it sets you down the correct path of how to start a performance program. And then it gives you those insights that took us a long time to figure out on our own. I kind of wish I had that guidance on certain things that would be impactful, but because we were just coming up with these on literal brainstorming sessions. So to have something to look at that can help frame out what you want to build your program around, it leads that horse to the water, right? And then you develop it into whatever you want for your particular problem or your executive ask at that point. So that's where I think it's most impactful, where you don't have to start from scratch.
Okay, great. All right. Thanks, Ryan. Appreciate it.
Thank you.